On Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, the United States Supreme Court held hearings on U.S. versus Skrmetti. The Skrmetti case is the first time the Supreme Court has directly considered how the Equal Protection Clause applies to gender-affirming care for minors. While the hearings were going on, out in the front, there were many, many people gathered to give speeches, to hold a rally, to hold up signs, protestations, conversations. I speak with three of the women who attended, and I wanted to get their experience firsthand of what went on for them. I'm speaking with Nikki Johnson, MD, Gabs Clark, who runs Affirming Reality, and Dawn Land, who's been a longtime activist. Let's get into it.
I'm Dr. Nikki Johnson, the co-director for Fair in Medicine. I am a mother, a physician, and an advocate for health. Today, I want to advocate for the truth. They are trying to drown us out with music because they are not advocating for the truth. Truth exists, it is discoverable, it's healing, and it gives you freedom. Sex is binary. That is a biological truth supported by science and cannot be altered regardless of medical or surgical intervention. Gender identity, on the other hand, is a concept rooted in subjective feelings rather than objective evidence or scientific fact. Subjective feelings can change throughout life, and while it's developmentally normal and healthy for children to explore their subjective identity, it is unhealthy for subjective feelings to be conflated with biological truth. My duty as a mother is to support and advocate for my daughter's healthy development. And my duty as a pediatrician is to help you support your children's healthy development. We are here today because adults, including the pediatricians at the American Academy of Pediatrics, are failing their fiduciary responsibility and have injected falsehoods that are eroding public trust and harming children. In 2018, the doctors in the AAP introduced gender-affirming care guidelines for treating gender dysphoria, which include halting puberty with drugs, prescribing sex hormones, and performing irreversible surgeries on children. Not only did those recommendations falsely conflate gender identity with sexual identity, but they also lacked quality, supportive evidence. In encouraging children to alter their healthy physiology, disfigure their healthy bodies, and risk long-term side effects, including infertility, the pediatric organization disregarded many ethical principles. Even worse, the AAP reaffirmed its guidelines in 2023. They appeared to pressure the WPATH to change its guidance, and they support today the defendant in this case, despite evidence demonstrating no overall benefit and even harm caused by gender-affirming care. Because of this blatant disregard for the truth, our children are witnessing the disintegration of trust and healthy relationships, including the doctor-patient relationship. Without this blatant disregard of the truth and widely accepted ethical principles in science and medicine, we would not need to be here today. FAIR submitted an amicus brief supporting the plaintiff in this case, aiming to assist the court by emphasizing the importance of truth in distinguishing between biological sex or sex and subjective gender identity in legal context. By making this distinction, We can secure individual freedoms by protecting essential sex-based rights. By making this distinction, we can let children know the truth and secure their freedom to grow and develop into healthy adults. Truth exists. It is discoverable. It has value. Desistance and detransition is truth. It promotes health. Today, I advocate for the truth because the truth is healing. Thank you very much.
Yeah!
Well, welcome everybody. This is going to be a bit of an interesting kind of deconstruction analysis, but just a reporting of what happened for you all who are part of Affirming Reality Connected. This is going to be very exciting about what happened outside of the Skrmetti case that was going on in the Supreme Court. And you all have individual stories and you've got a collective kind of experience that I really want to hear. So I have with me here Dr. Nikki Johnson. I got Dawn Land and Gabrielle Clark from Affirming Reality. So the three of you did convene on Washington, D.C. around the same time and met and got together, and there's footage on X and everything. I know that you had GoPros on you. Everything that you were doing outside, meeting people, supporting each other, doing individual things, all of it. There's so much of that that got recorded that as of this recording that I'm doing hasn't even come out yet. That's the beauty, I think, of the tech that, we are learning to use. That's very different than we had in 2021 when I was helping to orchestrate all these protests across the country against pediatric gender clinics. Dawn has really upped her game. Washington State is becoming almost, I don't know if it's a competition between California, Dawn, and Washington State, but Oregon as well. The whole West Coast has fallen to gender ideology between the universities, preschools, sanctuary state status, transing kids, all of it. And now to the point where arresting parents and state kidnapping of children is happening here. And we still have people across the country that don't even know the basics of what's going on. So I would love to start with Nikki and just ask, with all the experience that you've had, and please give a quick little intro of yourself. With all the experience that you have had personally involved in this and now being part of the Affirming Reality Connected group, where do you think we are with the public actually finding out what's going on?
Well, hi, Joey. Thanks for having me on to discuss this. I think that's a really loaded question right there, but for sure, just briefly, for your audience, I am a physician. I used to be a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics just as a practicing physician, not at any high advocacy level or any type of administrative level in any way. I've actually never been to an AAP conference, but in 2018, when they came out with their gender affirming care policy. So I'm a physician trained in pediatrics and pediatric intensive care. I was peripherally involved with the American Academy of Pediatrics just as a member to get continuing education information and just sort of general policy information. In 2018, I was actually still practicing in my clinical career. And I remember getting an email about the gender affirming care policy as it was released. And at that point, I was really astounded that a major medical organization, people that I trusted for advice on taking care of children, was putting out a policy that would allow children to essentially be harmed without any evidence, without any hesitation for potential risks of using medications and surgeries and basically just the psychological idea that they could actually change their sex. I was just astounded at that point. And it was at that point I'd already been frustrated with the academy for making political statements that really had nothing to do with actual science or advocating for children. And specifically, they were making, statements about President Trump at the time. I just didn't feel like this was befitting of a medical organization. And so I was already frustrated with them. But when this came out, this was, to me, this was my last straw, that I felt like they had gone too political. And in this case, the political position was completely overshadowing any scientific approach for advocating for children. And I dropped my membership. I sent an email to the president of the academy. I don't remember exactly what I said. I just remember I was frustrated. I hit send, and then that was the end of that. And I deleted anything from the AAP. So that's how I knew about the issue. But I, continued my medical practice. And fast forward to 2022, I'd left medical practice because I was disillusioned with pretty much everything that was happening in medicine related to my disagreements with COVID policy, with training and medical education. It became a toxic environment for me to work in because I was challenging some of the decisions that were being made. So there's obviously a lot more that goes into that. But and then during the pandemic, also, my children, I have two now teenage daughters. My children were internet exposed and basically babysat while my husband and I went to work. We were the essential workers during the pandemic, and we need to leave them alone. We needed to leave them alone. One was a preteen at the time, and the other was a teenager. People were actually afraid to be around our kids because of the nature of my job and my husband's job. So we couldn't have them, socialize with other people, and adults weren't necessarily willing to, be of help. And so, unfortunately, they were exposed to ideas and topics and things that we weren't ready for them to be exposed to, and they were harmed by COVID policies. Without going into a ton of details, we started to, figure out that they were exposed to gender ideology, to some sexuality topics, and things that I had no idea they were aware of. We also found out that some of this stuff was being discussed in the schools as well, and being supported in the school that they were in. But we sort of did a, kind of just talking with them. And in 2021-ish or spring of 2022, my kids' school had a lecturer come as a guest. So the Parents Association, some of the parents in this independent school system. So these are private schools that my daughters are in a private school, and parents in the different private schools in the area had requested a speaker to come and talk about the topic of gender ideology, and to give the teachers a workshop, and then a separate one for the parents. Well, this person was a social worker who came in who was completely affirming. They billed it as an educational workshop, but it ended up being a really, you should just let your kids try on all these genders, and this is the language that you should be using. This is the language that we're speaking, and it was just like, this is the way it is, and this is how we do things. It wasn't let's have a discussion about this topic. And so from my husband and I decided that that was pretty much as far as we were going to let it go. And I ended up sending an email to the entire school system. Now, granted, this is not the entire school system, but the entire school community. Their school is a private school that starts in infancy, and then it goes all the way up to senior year. And I had access to the directory, the full directory of faculty and parents and staff. And I sent in an email to every single one. Like so much that my email account was labeled as a spam account. I had to like send it in batches. That I was generally asking questions about where is this headed. I wasn't accusatory. I didn't use any defamatory language. I wanted to know if the school was actually going to present a speaker who came with, sort of scientific evidence and, with an opposing or a viewpoint about this topic. And uh, long story short, that ended up with me forming a parent group with like-minded parents who were also having the exact same questions and concerns that I was having. And then this sort of coincided with me leaving my job. The two weren't directly related, but I ended up leaving my job at the same time. And now I have been in full advocacy mode. So I can fully speak my mind about these issues without any, repercussions of any, employment or anything like that. I have decided that practicing clinical medicine is not the way that I want to go anymore. It is there's just too much that I can do, that I feel that I can do and should be doing to use my voice as a healthcare professional in the space that I can advocate for children, I can advocate for patients, and do policy work in different ways. So currently, I am the co-medical director for FAIR in Medicine, which is the organization that's a civil, liberties organization that started around 2021, discussing, hot topics that were like DEI and then gender identity. But I wasn't actually the original, medical person. I ended up taking the job when there was a vacancy. So I've done a lot in this area, just, speaking about this topic. I helped Restore Childhood, which is another organization, write a toolkit to educate schools and parents about this topic so that they are, kind of equipped with that scientific evidence that's actually out there, why the schools and and politicians are buying into this ideology, where all of that is coming from, specifically from the activists, and then how the schools create a school to medical transition pipeline through social transition, all those things. And so, and then that led me to figure, I simultaneously, while all of this was going on, I saw what Gabs Clark went through with her daughter, and realized that, wow, there's just gotta be a different way to handle this topic, because everybody was talking about the medical stuff and what was going on, surgically and medically, but nobody was talking about the psychological component and how parents can actually help, because most of us sort of just feel helpless in this space when it happens, because it's difficult to find someone who's not bought into all of these ideas, or at least in a position where they wouldn't be financially hampered or retaliated against for having a questioning voice, or really just going against the gender affirming care model. And I saw what Gabs was doing, so I wanted to learn a lot more about affirming reality. And I actually interviewed her. I wrote an article interviewing her about affirming reality. And so now I am, her physician advisor for affirming reality. But all that said, how did I get to Washington, D.C. this past week? I was actually asked, by Do No Harm to be a speaker. And so I was actually speaking at the rally, obviously on the side of not transing kids. And that was my initial reasoning for going to DC. The rally itself was filled with speakers every 5 minutes from 8 a.m. Up until noon, or scheduled for 12:30 when the oral arguments would end. So we were there in the freezing cold in Washington, D.C., outside in front of the steps of the Supreme Court building, um, voicing all of our concerns and talking about solutions to this problem. Most of the people were there were in support of Tennessee's ban, but other people had different, topics that they wanted to bring up and discuss. And we were there at the same time as trans rights activists were on our right side, um, doing their own rally and playing loud music to try and drown us out. So that was kind of the gist of the day on December 4th, was it right? Was the day of
Yeah.
the day of the actual rally. So that was kind of generally my perspective of that time. And
Had you ever been to anything
yeah,
like that before, Nikki?
never, never. I was never a person who, in any time that I felt very strongly about a case, I wrote about it. I either wrote about it in an op-ed, wrote about it on my own Substack once Substack came about, or just was just very vocal on social media. But in sort of like the health policy space itself, I've helped to co-author 2 white papers on lowering the cost of healthcare into sort of very specific focus on increasing the physician shortage, all of those things. I did all of my advocacy through um, meeting with legislators, phone calls, in-person, scheduled events, but never, ever, ever done any sort of political rally or any protest or anything like that. So this was my very first experience doing that.
We're going to hit
What'd you
some more
think?
on that too, about how somebody that comes from the background that you do, and then there you are and you're feeling it and you're seeing it and you're part of that, compared to the other 2 women that we've got in here. Thank you for that. My original question too had to do with something. I'll bring it up again, and maybe you can all be thinking about this, is how much of the American public do we think really even knows what's going on? So with your thank you so much, Nikki, and with all of that background, and you just answered Gab's question about that being your first time. I'd like to go to you, Gabs, who this is not your first time. I'm wondering if you can even say how many times you've been out like that. Well, I would say, isn't it been like about 15 times or something? And starting what year?
Um, Over the course of the last 3 years, I want to say it's probably been, yeah, about 5 a year. Some of them are big and wild and crazy, and some of them it's just 2 of us. You know what I mean? But it just depends. It just depends. But yeah, I've been to a few over the course of the last few years. I feel like Nikki is like a brand new baby turf. Maybe not even all the way at turf, you know what I mean? Just brand new at this. And I feel like I'm the coal miner of turfs. Just, I've been doing it, not.
Yeah, I was
And
definitely relying on their experience and expertise to navigate through the crowd. I'm not particularly interested in being in large crowds of people, so I can tell you that, except for a concert here and there, that's as far as I go with large crowds.
it was a bizarre situation. There were a lot of things that happened while she and I were walking around together, and you would never think a normal regular person would never just think that this was going to be their lives. You know what I mean? Sometimes it just is so bizarre. Dawn had the same experience, separately from us, with one guy who was just being completely obnoxious, a paid provocateur. And so, though that being exposed to that kind of stuff, and it's like that at every rally, at every public demonstration. There's always that one that is, coming in to try to throw salt in our game,
But Gabs,
Um,
can you give, I'm sorry, I didn't ask you the same thing I got from Nikki, and a much shorter version, because I know that a lot of people do recognize you at the point that they're seeing this, but this is also for people that don't, who the heck is Gabrielle Clark? I've never heard of her. I know you have a huge story, but if you could give us a taste, who are
I'll
you?
be
How did you
succinct.
get here?
I'll be succinct. So, I filed the first federal lawsuit against woke indoctrination in America. My son was being asked to list his identities and attach the signifier of privileged or oppressed to those identities. Now, that was a landmark case. And we were very much expecting to make it all the way to SCOTUS. But the other side was like, let's not do that. So they decided to acquiesce and allow my son to graduate. They were trying to prevent him from graduating because he wouldn't complete this class. And they allowed the graduation. So that case was resolved. But during the course of that case, my daughter was socially transitioned into believing she was a boy through the SEL program. So my son was indoctrinated through CRT, and my daughter was indoctrinated through SEL. And
Social emotional learning.
Yeah, for your audience, CRT is critical race theory, and SEL is social emotional learning. So both of my children were being affected by these ideas, these programs, really.
And this is public school system you're talking
It's
about.
a public charter. So yes, they still get all of their money from the government. But both of them were charter schools. And so when that happened with my, once we resolved our case with my son, I had to recapture my daughter. And trying to find somebody to help me do that, I didn't relate to any of the things that were available to me. I knew that going to a therapist was going to put her in, in an affirming situation. And the help available didn't describe what my daughter was going through. So all of the descriptions of rapid onset gender dysphoria, I didn't recognize that as my daughter. I didn't recognize that as what was happening to my daughter. So I created my own program. I created a program very similar to a 12-step program because I recognized the addiction aspect and the peer pressure and the affirmation by authority figures. And so I decided to kind of make a combination of an addiction recovery program and I don't know, a therapeutic model, if you will. And so that worked. And my daughter was able to desist relatively easily with some adjustments in my parenting. And taking a different approach in my parenting and a more measured approach in how I get her to listen to me and get her to trust me. And so once I realized what this was, I wanted to tell other parents. So I created the Affirming Reality methodology and became a coach and started helping parents individually. And right now we're trying to expand that program. We've taken on Dr. Nikki Johnson to help us with that program, so that we can hopefully expand this so that more people in more states and even throughout the world will be able to solve this with their children without medicalization, without them losing their entire childhoods to this maladaptive coping strategy called gender affirming care. Social transition, for social transition, a lot of people just think that it's not that big a deal. But for me, And for other mothers and other parents like me, they know that social transition is not just funny clothes and wrong sex pronouns and goofy nicknames. It is a serious problem. It's a serious psychological problem. And it causes a lot of harm to the child, physically even. So we want to be able to help everyone, but for the purposes of this rally, our duty asked me to give a statement or give a testimony for their amicus brief, and I did that, and that amicus brief was used in this case. So me being at the rally, I felt was important. And everyone on my team felt it was important. Thank you all very much. So they made sure that I got there. They made sure that I was there to let my voice be heard and participate in this historic event.
Let me,
Awesome. And
can I,
go
you mind
ahead.
if I go back just a tiny bit too? I just want to just add a little bit though. I don't generally talk about my daughters very much. We try to make some of this stuff private, but when I knew that they were exposed to this, I recognized right away that this was a problem that needed to be tackled um, from a parenting approach and through an approach of sort of like kind of reclaiming my child. I realized when my daughters were exposed to this ideology and started believing this stuff. My daughter, my oldest daughter didn't get nearly as far as Gab's daughter did, but it was pretty clear that this needed to be this was a parenting solution that needed to come from here because we knew that that was going to solve this because we could easily see that one, the medical community wasn't going to be able to fix it because they were the ones causing part of the problem. Politically, they were causing the problems as well. But that this was something that immediately made me think to myself, how did I miss this? What happened in my relationship with my daughter that let it get to this point? So for me, that was really, really, really important to see that. And I think that explains the connection that I have here with Gabs and the thing that makes me a little bit different than some of my physician colleagues who are also in this space. Didn't really say I really don't talk too much about my own daughter about this, but I think it's important for people to realize um, uh, that it does happen, and it happens to all of us for even those of us who don't think it could happen to us. So.
Mhm. So back to the rally, Gabs. Do you have anything you want to say about how was this one different? We know you've been involved now at least 15 times or whatever in the last 3 years. You and I met in 2022. I know you had already, I think you had already met Dawn before that because of Port Townsend, right? So
Yes.
the AAP rally that we did that Aaron and another woman put together in Anaheim, California in the fall of 2022. Not only did you and I get to meet, but I mean, we shared a room and
Right.
we had the experience that I'm always encouraging other women in this very large United States to try to show up and meet each other personally and have these conversations. And we have so little in terms of privacy with ourselves, with each other in the world because of what we're seeing going on with tech and everything, that these relationship building things that we do and Dawn and I did some of that just sitting at a table in the room at that event, just having all this time observing other people, looking
Right.
to see who the new people like Wesley Yang, popping up on the scene
Yep.
because of the man with the sandwich boards, and it's like watching. We've been in on the beginnings of this when no one was paying attention to us screaming on the streets and whatever. And I think that rally and that entire event that Aaron and this other woman got together was so pivotal for a lot of us because, you know, the stories that I
We all
know.
were there. We were all there. I mean,
Mhm.
I had already heard of Wesley Yang. He was actually already following me because of the CRT thing. And my involvement in the CRT space, the anti-CRT space, that had already acquainted me with some of these people. But I had heard of you from other people, from radfems that I'd met on Twitter. And I was very anxious to meet you. So when the opportunity arose for us to be able to meet at the AAP, yeah, by then I was already a good hardened turf by then. I've been baptized through Port Townsend's, nightmare. I still have a broken finger because of it. So, that was a unique experience. And I can tell you, the reason why this was different was because I didn't have to fight anybody this time. I didn't, and I was, and if it is any indication, I'm a tough broad, okay? But the entire time I was terrified that a fight was going to break out, that there was going to be some aggression.
In DC, you're talking about.
Yes, by trans rights activists. I mean, every now and again, I would look up and I would tell Aaron, I'm like, Aaron, something's getting ready to happen. I mean, it had that feeling like they were getting ready to start being aggressive. And I told Nikki that, and I told Dawn that. I'm like, Dawn, I just, if they're surrounding us, it feels like they're closing in on us, because
They were closing in on us.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they were.
that was the way that it had always happened before. However, previous years and in previous protests and rallies and things of that nature, we did not have the presence of police that we and protection that we had this time.
Yeah, could you explain that too? Because that to me, that was kind of fascinating. I mean, I've been in crowds before. I grew up in lower middle class neighborhood. I went to, high school football games that got violent every now and then. You can sort of
Sure.
sense when things were happening.
Yeah.
And I grew up during, the crack era, so I knew,
Right.
I knew. I've been in situations where there's violence. I've been on the subway
danger.
with the
You know what
with the
danger is.
crazy,
Right.
with the crazy homeless guy, you know what I mean, or like the
Yeah.
schizophrenic walking down the street. I've been in those situations, so I can kind of recognize it and I have that level of alertness. But for something like this, that's political. I've only sort of seen violence and escalation on television, and it seems to me that some of these people who do that are people who really want to make a name for themselves, or
Yes.
really want to be out there for,
Yes.
for that notoriety. So
Yep.
I wasn't necessarily, looking for it the way that you guys were.
Right.
And
Well,
so
we have to look
so
for
my
it
two questions are,
because of our
one,
experiences.
can
Yeah.
you be specific about things that happened in the past? And then number two, do you think that the police presence, because they were actually, they had police escort us from the table where the speakers checked in. We had armed escorts taking us over to the stage. And then there was also police presence, like I think Gabs mentioned before that they were armed. Sorry,
There were plain
plainclothes
clothes.
officers in
Yeah.
the crowd that we knew were there to support us, and were obviously to keep the peace. And then there was also obvious, like, uniformed officers that were standing guard and obvious to every, person who was there. So I'm very mindful of that presence. So I don't, how was this different compared to, some of those other rallies? That would be my question.
Well, I mean, I would say so in Texas, we do have that presence, but more importantly, we have regular old, dudes, and everybody carries. So everybody knows, let's keep it nice. And they're like, let's keep it nice, chickens, okay? Because everybody is carrying. And I do mean everybody. So they do everything they can to keep it peaceful because they know one shot means 1,000, and we're all in trouble then. And nobody wants to lose their life over this, right? So that's how it's different, from say Texas. But for in places where there is no open carry like there is in Texas, the police don't help us. The police don't come. We can even beg them to put up barriers for us and things like that, and a lot of the times they won't. They feel like, oh, it's nothing, you're fine. And unless you make it clear to them that there is the potential for the loss of life, they won't come out at all. They'll just tell us, call us if something happens. And of course, by that time, I mean, there was one protest in Pittsburgh where the police were actually literally there, and I was dragged around, and I, was covered in bruises and things like that. And they were there watching us, and they told me to back off, even though I was the one being attacked. So it's they're not always there to help us. A lot of the times when we do this stuff, it is in major cities. Major cities are blue, primarily blue. And so the law enforcement is not, they're not motivated to really help us. But I mean, it helped. I think the difference here is that there were a lot of high profile people here at this particular thing. They know that doctors and lawyers have the resources to hire lawyers to sue the police department if they don't follow through on the protecting and serving of the public.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I do think
was it
I
a previous rally that didn't you have it, like wasn't that American Academy of Pediatrics rally in DC?
that
Was the
was my
presence
rally
different
that
then? Yeah.
okay, well, the difference between this rally, I think when we first showed up, there weren't as many people on the other side. And it was only when the crowd began to outnumber us and infiltrate our side, that's when the feeling changed, like
Mhm.
we really need to be on our guard. Because what happens when there's a large group of opposition, they tend to like try to surround you. They infiltrate and get in until suddenly it's too late to protect yourself from them. There was at one point where there was a whole group of them that had gone up towards near the front. And I said something to Erin. I was like, they're all on this side. Can we do something about that? And she had said no. But the next time I looked, there was a line of security that they had gotten them out and had blocked them off from entering that area because it was dangerous to have them there. Because they can do anything once they're inside like that. They can do anything, and they outnumbered us. So you have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and this
so
being your first, Nikki, I think that I know that a lot of us talked about the possibility of this being one of the more, I didn't even attend and I was really nervous. I barely slept the night before worrying about, all of you. And Nikki, I think it seems like this was one of the safest ways. This was the safest experience that you could have had entering into this
Yeah.
melee that both Dawn and Gabs have been involved in, and you haven't seen the worst of or experienced the worst of this stuff. And it's a beautiful thing because, to be able to have the experience that you did will help encourage, and just the visuals that came out of this as well, and having two experienced people like that have your back that you could rely on and look at and know.
Yeah.
For a long time I was doing trainings online, Zooms with parents and other citizens about how to do peaceful legal protesting in front of gender clinics, like I said, all of 2021. And I always had to think of planning for the worst, you know,
Mhm.
and what would be the worst? There's our bullets and stuff and things flying and things. None of that stuff happened at 13.
We didn't get spit on. We didn't
Yeah.
get pee thrown on us. We didn't get any of that stuff. But that is the reality at other protests.
Yeah.
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 I mean, but that's the thing though, too. There's like I still don't I mean, my husband's in law enforcement and their job isn't necessarily to their job is kind of crowd control. Like if things got
Right.
like sort of
Mhm.
mob related and really got out of hand,
Sure.
that's when they would step in. I'm not really sure how much I don't know. I don't know. In this particular case, I felt like because the police presence was so strong, and they actually, I mean, like there was one plainclothes officer who asked me a couple of times if I was okay when I was just kind of looking for Gabs or looking for Don or somebody I was just looking for. And so I think this is sort of a different scenario than even any other kind of political rally, or even say like a Black Lives Matter political rally. There's that their job is crowd control and to kind of prevent the maximum amount of violence. Their job isn't necessarily to prevent us from getting spat on or
Right.
shoved or anything like that. So I would never be expecting the police to do that. I just felt
And
like I feel like yeah, I agree with you. I feel like this is a different
so
a different scenario. So like I was mindful of that the entire time, and yeah, grateful that nobody peed on me or spat on me. Because
I'd
right,
like
yeah,
to
yeah,
bring up
yeah,
so
I
let me
would
let
have
me
seen a
two
just tell
other
different
you.
two
I
other
would
Let me
have
just
seen
tell
a
you.
political
different Nikki come out.
two other political movements, and that political is something you'd mentioned earlier, Nikki and Gabs. I think you'd appreciate this. In that, what I was involved in years before was animal rights activism, and some of that happened right in Berkeley, because of a horse a racetrack, and I was helping with other people about trying to keep people from going in to gamble and support the racetrack and all that stuff. That involved local police, and absolutely they are trained and they are supposed to make sure, something that Gabs had said earlier about keeping the peace. And if you see one individual who starts to physically go after somebody, the way that paid agitator did at Aaron Friday with a bullhorn 2 inches
Right.
from her face,
There are laws about that, right?
but
So he could
they don't necessarily follow them.
they
Not in
don't
this case,
necessarily follow them.
because
So what I think and this is why it is so hard to explain to people what it really is like in a very dangerous protest, because me and Dawn saw the potential for one spark and this is over.
Yeah,
Um
it just hit that point and then it's like, oh, nope, it just turned.
yeah.
And yeah,
I
oh
mean,
yeah.
we saw the point at which other protests have turned into a
Yeah.
melee.
melee, yeah.
So okay, I don't know if you remember that girl who went up to the front and started yelling at people, and she was kind of elbowing and shoving. Well, they have that, and then they have what is that they have another person come in and start being inappropriate, getting too close to people and being in their space and breathing on them and just stuff like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times why they do this, I have no idea, but they try to unplug all of your microphones and things
Right.
like that. Like
Well, they're trying to get a reaction
right,
because
they're trying to get a
um
reaction. They're trying to get
like
somebody to swing first.
at,
Like,
at the Tacoma rally when Toby Parker was there, before it even started, there was a young lady who came up and stood right here in my space and just was like this close to me and was just insistent. I just want to know why you guys are doing this. I just want to know about this and that. And I had to stifle the urge to shove her away from me.
right.
And then all I have to do is shove her, and then I pushed her, and then
And
I'm
that's
it.
and
I'm
then
the
it's
instigator.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's I
This
mean,
is
and
a
there
good.
there have been other people with the bullhorns,
Mhm.
putting the
Yeah.
bullhorn with the siren directly
Yes.
on somebody's
Yeah.
ear.
Yeah.
We've had two girls who have had, who've had their hearing affected because of it. I mean, that's
Hmm.
against the law too, but they won't, you know what I'm saying? Like
It's assault.
It's
That's
assault.
what I yelled at
Yeah,
that man who was doing that to Aaron Friday.
that's right.
That's
That's assault.
that's assault. That is assault.
This is a
So
good
is this
opportunity, though. Hang on,
oh,
Nikki. I know you're so
mhm.
curious about this, but Dawn, please, will you give us a quickie? What's your background? Where are you from? What
Absolutely.
kinds of things? Because you've been doing a ton in Washington State to the point where you're spending your own money. You finally got a pack together. What was it you did around the referendum? Please give people who is Dawn Land? What the heck are you doing in this?
Well, like, I'm just a mom who hates bullies. I mean, that's the long and short of it. All of these, the whole trans activists and everything, that's what they do is they prey on people and they pick on people. But it started in 2016. My friend Kaylee had a locker room privacy bill going on, and it was to keep men in dresses out of the women's locker room. And I was real being a busy mom, homeschooling. I thought, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. Of course, they'll get the signatures for that. And I was shocked when they didn't. So when they tried it again in 2017, I jumped in with everything. Like I was the manager of the South office. I every weekend I would go out and get signatures, and every during the week I would go and process the signatures, count them, verify them, and everything. I would bring one of my kids with me because they fight when I'm not there. um, but yeah, all in. And this was my first experience with trans activists. Like we had trans activists that infiltrated. They found out where we were going to be, and they followed us like 2.5 hours up to Cedar Woolley to follow us around and try to prevent us from getting signatures. They would follow us around and tell people, "You don't have to sign that," kind of thing. It was wild. We had to call the cops on them twice and everything. That was 2017. In 2019, there was Drag Queen Story Hour was all the rage, and some moms and I were going around. Everyone was protesting the drag queen story hour, but not me. I would actually go inside, sit down, make friends, and film everything. Like, no, literally make friends. So I was nice. Those moms were nice. I would say, "Hey, you guys don't mind if I film this, do you?" "Oh no, you go right ahead." And so there was that. There was
She is so good at that too. Like she
well,
is
and that was
so good at that because she's so nice.
well.
I love to see Dawn go in and start talking to.
She used to
I
be a
do.
cheerleader.
I
She's
talk to everybody. In fact, there was one time, it was down in Vancouver, Washington. I was the first one to show up and wait in line for the drag queen story hour. The family right behind me had two little girls, one of them dressed in drag. And so we waited like an hour, and they just went to go open the doors, and they said, "Okay, you don't have any kids with you, so you can't go in. If there's room, when everybody else is in there, we'll let you sit in the back." And I was like, "I was here first. I'm here for the drag queen story hour." It got I because I'd been sitting there making friends with all of these moms. They got mad at the library, and the library backed themselves into a corner. They're like, "But she was here. She was here the whole time." And that mom who had the little girl dressed in drag sent her, they had brought like a big burly security dude from the library to stand there menacingly. And they're like, "Yeah, you have to go." And I'm like, "No, I don't." "But you have to do what we say." No, I don't. I don't have to do what you say. And so, but she sent her little drag girl up. "You can come in with me." And so this is how I got to sit in the front row
She
next to the
let you
drag
borrow
little
her.
girl's
Yes.
mom. Yeah, and that's where I got the footage of like the drag queen. It was actually a woman who says that she's a man named Owen, who then dresses in drag in parody of women. To perform drag. And so she was the one, she asked the kids what they wanted to do when they grew up. And this little 3-year-old boy in a pink princess dress said, "I want to be Spider-Man." And so I pan over with my camera, and he's nodding, "Uh-huh." And so the drag queen's laughing, or Princess Spider-Man. She queered it for him. He was the
Mm.
only one that she queered that for him.
Mhm.
So that's how I got that footage, and that's how I heard this drag queen tell the mom where she could take her little girl to go perform drag in an all ages drag show, and I got a picture of this little girl in drag with the drag queen. But you know, it was all because I made friends with everybody in line. I know it's terrible,
But Dawn,
but
I can't
yeah,
help but look at Nikki here, and I'm seeing her trying to work this out. The wheels are
No,
turning.
I think it's
Back at the
fascinating.
woman who's pretending she's a man,
Oh
pretending
yeah.
she's in drag.
Oh yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's
No,
oh
I'm
my
just I'm
goodness.
fascinated with Don's genius. That's what
Yeah.
this is for me.
But we that same year, when King County was having all the drag queen story hours, they also had a teen pride event for kids, for teens, preteens and teens. And it was like 6 hours long. And so a bunch of us moms went there, and the library was open until like 4, I want to say, but the event went on afterwards for like another 3 hours. And so me and another mom stayed there, and they were trying to get us to leave. And I'm like, it's a public event. You know, there are other moms here. And they called the cops on us and had the cops haul us out, trespass us out of there. And so that was a lot too, but they were giving away binders for these girls. They had drag queens performing for these kids, which I've got video of that too, like stripping off some of their clothing and everything. It was a lot. And so protesting just exposing it is a form of protest,
Yes. Yeah.
showing everybody of what's going on. Um, and
It's
so we would
educating.
go, yeah,
It's educating.
it
That's
is. It is.
yeah.
We would go to the library board meetings to complain about this. Um, so, but
Did you take your
they
Packer?
um no, that was later. That was later. I didn't have it at that time, but so we would go there, and at one point Trantifa, as we call them, was waiting for us after the meeting ended, with a baseball bat. And only because there were some nice conservative men that distracted them, and one of them escorted us to my car. That was the only reason that we didn't get beaten in the parking lot. So that was 2019. By 2020, well, that was 2020. There was all kinds of stuff going on in 2020.
Yeah.
Um, but so that was a lot. And then by 2021, we were doing the gender clinic protests.
That's where you and
I
I met, Dawn, was through that
Right,
whole thing. Can I get a
right.
witness?
But
Hmm.
I would
Wow.
speak at legislative committee hearings, library board meetings, and at one library board meeting, speak at the one in Vancouver. I actually brought my Packer there. I have a Packer,
You
and for
have it
those
right
who
there with you. Can you pull it out?
no, no, Gabs does not want to see that.
Oh, okay.
What
And
so
for the audience,
so
I'll get a
for
It's
a
picture. I'll get a
but
it's
picture.
for
heartbreaking, but people do need to be educated
Go,
about
go
that.
but
ahead. I'll
No, I'll put it in. I'll
um
put it in
I
later.
I
I'll
put it
edit it.
away. Yeah,
Because
I
okay.
put it away for
I
now.
didn't know until this weekend. I didn't know what a Packer was.
Yeah, I showed
I,
it to
Oh,
you.
and
So
she showed it to me. Yeah.
for those who don't know, a packer is a prosthetic penis for girls who think that they're supposed to be boys. And the one that I have is for girls who are 4 to 8 years old. And so I did bring that to a library board meeting, the one in Vancouver, and I brought that out. And the collective gasp and mortification, and the chair was like, put that away. That has nothing to do with what we're doing. And so I did put it away, and I said, um, that's a Packer, and I disagree that it has nothing to do with what you're doing, because that particular Packer is for 4 to 8 year old girls, which is the target audience of your drag queen story hour. So don't
yeah.
tell me it has nothing to do with that.
And that's about, I mean, that is about social transitioning. I
It
mean, this
is.
this is one of the aspects of social transitioning that people don't get, that they don't
Right.
understand, that it even sexualizes little girls. It's not just funny names and silly clothes.
And I call
But
that SET, social emotional training, because if I was a little
Right.
girl, way back as a young, I didn't have the word lesbian at that time, but I was attracted to women, girls. And if I had had something like that, I thought I must be a boy. I was born in the wrong body. And if
Mm.
I had that nice little squishy thing to put in my pants, I would have been on testosterone as puberty blockers and testosterone as fast as I could. That would have
Yeah.
made me more emboldened to be right that I was trapped in
Right.
the wrong body.
Yeah,
And
but
that,
see, so I think that's Gab's point. I think that is kind of really the essential take home here is that people, and including the people at the rally that we went to in DC, are focused on the medical part, what the
Right.
doctors are doing, the medical and the surgery part. They don't understand everything that goes into the social transitioning, which even Hillary Cass in their review could come up with, the best thing they could come up with is that social transitioning doesn't make gender dysphoria worse and it doesn't make it better. But what it does do is continue this ideological path on for these kids who then later, once they reach the age where they can be, have puberty blockers or sexualizing hormones, and then later as, adulthood, have surgery, it continues them on that path so that they believe that this gender ideology is a true thing, that they can change their sex. And
yes.
so all of these pieces and parts that actually help them or support the social transitioning are key. And that's the stuff that people don't know. I really don't think so. We just don't talk about it enough. It's not in the minds of people. It's not the sexy stuff that gets put in a band in these bands that we're seeing throughout the states.
And that's
Well, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say it's because they don't believe any of it. They don't experience any of it. Like my state with all of the medicalization, because I haven't even gotten into the referendum and the laws that they're passing here. Um, we were doing the protesting at the pediatric gender clinics. We've also done with the sports, gone out to sports and protesting boys and the girls sports. I've done a lot of that too. I've spoken at school boards and everything, but they're making laws. They don't make laws about the 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 social transition. They make laws about the medicalization and everything. So if people know anything, they know just barely know anything about the medicalization, and so we have a hard enough time getting them to believe that. Last year in 2023, my state made a law that said that if a child expresses a gender identity, that the state can hide your child and pay for their transition, like the puberty blockers, the wrong sex hormones, and the surgeries. And so I filed a referendum against that. And when we were going around getting signatures, people would say, well, they're not doing that. My own dad has even said, but they're not doing that. I'm like, yes, they are. You look at the websites of like Seattle Children's Hospital and even Mary Bridge Children's Hospital, the campus has a surgeon, a plastic surgeon that does that for ages 13 and up, is it says right on his website. So we have trouble getting people even to believe that. So
That's crazy
they
because
don't.
they've even expanded to, I mean, my state just recently expelled Seattle
Right,
Children's Hospital from the
right,
state, from
right,
practicing medicine at all in this state,
right. But
because of
that's
what they were doing, because of the gender transition aspect of it.
right. But that's why they don't have the bandwidth right now to understand the dangers of the social transition, because they don't even fully comprehend the dangers and what is truly happening with the medicalization and with the surgeries and just all of it. So that's why we have to sound the alarm about absolutely everything. For that referendum, we got within 5,000 signatures of getting it on the ballot. And so this is why I ended up going to DC, because it's become apparent that here in my state, um, that I'm not going to be able to get stuff done here in my state. I have to go over their head. And so that's why I went to DC, so that I could talk to Congress, members of Congress, and tell them, I need help in my state. We need help in my state. So many people have thanked me for going and telling them. And I am contemplating when I can go back just to talk to the members of Congress. And yes, of course, to go to the protest, the rally, whatever you want to call it, because it was important to show as many people in support of the Tennessee law as we could.
Dawn,
Right.
what was the referendum number, and
It
what was the money that we're talking about, just as a citizen, that you were looking at to even get all of that stuff out?
it was the law was 55.99, and the referendum was Ref 101. And I had never taken donations from anyone before I did that, because my philosophy is, money comes with strings attached. And there's somebody always, they give you money and then they want you to do their stuff when I really need to do this stuff. But I had no choice. I needed to accept donations. And it was thousands of dollars that people donated to help with this effort, which was good because we needed to print the petition. It was like a large size because the law was really long, and you have to print the entire law on the back of it. So it was a big fold out, like a newspaper petition, to get the signatures on one section, and it was expensive to print. And so it was about, because we printed like 60,000 of these petitions, and it was thousands of dollars. And once we were finished with that, we did everything that we could. We all, so many of us, so many friends helping me with this, not just donating money, but actually going out and getting signatures. I couldn't have done it without my friends. But so many of us, when we were finished, there was still, funds there. And I said, I can't just let it go. I have to keep going. And so that's why I still have the PAC. I still have the Reject 5599. That's my PAC. That's the website, reject5599.com. And that is how I was able to pay for the hotel and the airlines to and from DC. And I will likely go again to try to talk to some Congress people once President Trump is reinstalled in the White House. I will probably go there again to talk to these people because we need help. My state is completely jacked up, and I am not just, I can either sit there and watch it happen, or I can do something about it. And I fully intend to do something about it as much as I possibly can.
So this brings you all to DC, and Nikki, you were the only one that was asked to speak by Our Duty. Is that it? Gabs, were you asked to
Oh,
also
I was
speak
actually
at this
asked to
particular?
speak by Do No Harm. Actually,
Oh, do no harm.
I was
Sorry.
connected to Do No Harm, through my work with FAIR, helping to spread the word about their Stop the Harm database that, people can use to look up where these procedures and things are happening in their state.
Mhm.
And so that's how I had that connection, and I heard about it through multiple, kind of different sources, yeah, do no harm. They needed, we had a lot of parents, you had a lot of, attorneys on the stage, you had a lot of activist groups, leaders of activist groups, but we didn't have a ton of physicians, believe it or not. I mean, there's, doctor from, do no harm and came and spoke, and me. So that's the really insane part of all of this. Is there are not a lot of physicians
Why do you think?
speaking up. Well, again, I think one of the things is the people who are 80% of practicing physicians in the United States are now employed by large health systems, number one. That is a
Yeah.
big problem. The physicians with the loudest voices tend to be people who are practicing independently, meaning they have their own practice. Now, throughout the country, you are seeing a lot of people get silenced by laws that threaten their licenses. And, of course, in states like California, and Washington State, I mean, you even saw during COVID that, the state of California passed a law that was signed by the governor, then later got challenged, and removed, that physicians can have their license removed by talking about anything that wasn't COVID policy
Thank you, Gavin
sanctioned by the
Newsom.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sanctioned by the state. And so if you have that going on with things like COVID, we're also seeing similar things that are related to gender ideology, and especially in states with shield laws that protect kids, protect doctors, and have policies that allow these surgeries and these procedures to go on. You really threaten the livelihoods of people who are professionals who speak out about it. And so these people can be, legally charged, civilly charged, and have their livelihoods threatened. You have Right now we have a Texas whistleblower, who's was targeted by the federal government, the Department of
Eithan, Dr.
yeah,
Eithan
Eitan
Haim.
Haim
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
charged by the Biden administration's Department of Justice, and actually now has a gag order that he can't even talk about this stuff. And so that is a big part of it. It's a loaded question to ask whether or not why physicians are speaking out about it, but a lot of us, and a lot have bought into the ideology as well. And so it's a combination, or a lot of people are just, they're hands off. It's not my specialty. I don't deal with this. I don't take care of those patients.
Right.
Let somebody else handle it. We're just like everybody else. If it's not affecting you, then you tend to mind your own business and go about your life. And that's just kind of the gist of it. There's not very many people who are built with the stuff that the people in this room have.
Well, it's like what Dawn said. I mean, she hates bullies. I do too.
Yep.
And
I
that's
think
Yeah.
there's, I think there, I think, I mean, you said one thing that I don't think that a lot of people really seriously take into consideration is that a lot of people bought into this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, when I go around to talk to people about this stuff, most of the people are like, "How could this happen?" And and I think, well, a lot of people bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people still believe in it. And so even when we talk about fighting it, a lot of the times, even the fighters who are fighting it don't take into account the opposition that we're going to get. We just think we're going to fight it, we're going to win. And that you do have to have that kind of blind optimism about it. But in reality, I mean, Dawn is a prime example of that. She's fighting, she fought as hard as she could. She did as much as she could, and she was still short because of how many, not just because she's tiny, but also because because she just couldn't reach. She's got very tiny feet too.
Yeah,
Got
it's
extremely
true. I
little.
do.
So she walks really fast. But
Only when I'm motivated to go yell at somebody.
you are a height bigot. I know that you are.
she tried very hard, and she did everything she could. She even took money when she didn't want to. She even, what I mean, she had to make some concessions in places that she didn't necessarily want to, because she was very passionate about this. But the fact of the matter is that she's doing this in one of the most hostile environments to opposition to gender affirming care.
Well, this is why I tell people I live in hell, because it is hellish here. I'm a pro-life Christian, turf over here. And everything about this whole state is hostile to everything I represent and everything I
She
stand
still
for.
fights. This,
Yeah.
let me tell you something
But
about her.
Don,
This
you're a
is why
fighter.
I love her. She fights like there is no tomorrow. I mean,
There, yeah,
There
we're
is no
walking
tomorrow.
around. We're walking around. We're getting ready. We go down into the lobby, and the first thing Nikki says is, "You yell even with your clothes." Like she has on, a t-shirt that has saying on it. She's got two bags. Both of them have slogans on them. And she is living in hell doing this. And so I think that I mean, Dawn to me is like, she's like some kind of magical creature, okay? Because she does not care about what the repercussions are. She's going to speak loudly. And not only that, but she's doing it with me and Nikki have a personal interest in this. You know what I mean? Like, we have a personal interest in this. Dawn, this is just because she does not, because she has principles, and she's
they
principled
made
enough.
me mad. You
They
don't
made
make
her
me
mad,
mad.
and
You
she's
don't
gonna
make
yell
me
at
mad. Yeah, I will. I'll go yell at them.
I think that's so fascinating. That is so fascinating to me,
Yeah.
that she is as passionate as she is, even though this hasn't exactly touched her home, the way that it has so many other parents who have become active in this. But she lives in a hostile environment, and she still fights as hard as she does. Fights harder than she fights harder than me. That's for sure. I wouldn't go. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be carrying around a bunch of bags with a bunch of slogans on them in a hostile environment. But she does it. She
I
does it.
live in a hostile environment. I don't
Yeah.
have any
Yeah.
choice. I can sit
Yeah.
there and be quiet, or I can do something about it. So many people that are here, when I would go into the drag queen story hour and sit down and talk to the parents, the moms mostly that were there, um, you know, it hit me. They're nice people. They're nice people. They don't have an agenda. And they think that them being there, bringing their children and offering them up to, the man in a dress reading books about gender, they think that they're just being kind. That's what they've been taught. They're
Yep.
young moms that think that they're doing the right thing, and that those who choose not to do that or speak out against it are somehow hateful, when we're not. We're seeing that it is not a good thing to sexualize kids in this way. But they just don't see the big picture. They just think they're being kind, and it makes me sad that they've been duped into going along and playing along with this. And I've always said how the moms that you know their moms maybe taught them to be kind like this, and now they're moving it further down. And so by the time their kids grow up, what are their kids going to be agreeing
Yeah.
to
What are
with
they going
these
to
Yeah.
allow?
people?
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
are they going
Right.
to allow?
that's going to be like
Well,
maps, what they call maps and things like that. And that frightens me. We
well,
can't allow it
kindness
to
is
go
one
that
thing, but it's
far.
also this idea that you can't challenge authority. And some
Yeah.
Right.
people don't get that. And the other piece of it is at least for the physician side of things and the scientists, I just don't. I have a hard time believing that these people are just kind and they want to do the right thing. I think some people may be kind of duped and bought into it in that way. But people of my age and older who
Right.
know how medicine is practiced with science and and thinking, and learn how to use our brains and ask questions on rounds and question our teachers and mentors. That's just not how we were trained. So I don't buy into that. But I do buy into the idea that sometimes people are just lazy. They want somebody else
Yeah.
to do the work for them. And people have not, people really just don't know what they can actually do politically. They don't understand that they actually do have power.
I wrote
And
about that. I wrote about
yeah.
that the other day, because
Hmm.
we went
Hmm.
when we got, I mean, so the rally was on Wednesday. And we had time after the rally to do other things. And so
Hmm.
we went and did some other things. And then the following 2 days, we decided to stay and go and meet with some of the legislators.
So please
But
do take me through how it was that you ended up in this iconic photograph with Aaron Friday as well. You literally, I knew that Dawn had already gone online and she's trying to get a meeting with Nancy Mace ahead of time, right?
Let me start by saying this. Now, remember back in my very lengthy story, about myself, my very preview, I talked about doing health policy work, things like that. And everything that I had done, because I wasn't doing rallies, things like that, I was writing and I was meeting with legislators. I would get online, email them, or I would call their office, or, had people that I was working with in health policy set up meetings and then go to DC and then take 2 days. And I would go to office in office with a preset meeting on a calendar just to talk with an aide, right? So, this is the way this is done. And, before we went, Gabs and Don were trying to get meetings with people, getting set up. And, by the time we got there, or, at least even we're on our way there the night before, we realized, that we weren't getting responses. And, there was no set meeting. I was too busy. I was focusing on my speech and kind of doing all that part of it. And I was letting these guys do that. But then it was just like, well, we don't have any meetings. But, and I was actually set to go home on Thursday, but because of the snowstorm, I couldn't, we decided to stay and drive back later. So we got up in the morning, had breakfast, and said, "Okay, we're just going to go to Capitol Hill." And Dawn was kind of the ringleader too on this. Mainly it was like, "I'm going to yell at people."
That's how I do in Olympia here, because I go talk to and I don't typically make meetings. I don't, but I bring them information, and I am so adamant. I was so adamant here with that over the recent years that my state senator got tired of me and redistricted me out of her district. That is how much I make myself known. I mean business, and you will listen to me.
Yeah. But we did not have appointments. We got up, had breakfast.
We didn't have any.
Bundled up in the cold.
Yeah.
The wind was so strong that it literally knocked me and Gabs over.
It did.
Yes,
it did.
It knocked us over. It knocked us over. I'm still missing something out of my purse, and I have no idea what it is because the wind just took it away. But I mean,
did.
We got there, and we are just goofy as I don't know what, because we don't know what we're doing. It's cold. We're having to bundle up, take everything off, put everything back on.
But Nikki's done this before, and she's saying this, and I'm thinking, Nikki, are you like, we're not going to be able to talk to anybody? This is crazy.
I didn't think that. No, I absolutely
knew.
I knew that because I had already gone to DC a bunch of times that their offices are open. We knew that we would be able to, at the very least, talk to some interns who were sitting at the front desk,
right,
or maybe a legislative aide who might happen to come out of their office. We didn't know for sure if we were going to be able to talk to any actual, congressmen or senators.
I knew from watching, like, I go and wreck the public comments whenever I can, right? So
yes.
So I knew, from watching my hero, Alex Stein, right? Like, you can go there and you'll catch them going back and forth.
Right.
And so so I knew that was possible. And I've spent enough time in my legislator in the state capitol here to know that, House reps and Senate members just casually walk around all the time, and you can see them. Also, that they allow their people from their district to just come chill at their office. And so we said, you know what? I said, Nancy Mace started following me the other day. Let's go see if she started following me on Twitter. So let's go see if she'll let us in. So I sent her, I think I sent her, I sent a request. Dawn sent a request. And when we got there, Aaron Friday was just coming off the elevator. And we had, we caught her. And she was, hey, Aaron, where are you going? We're going to go see Nancy Mace. And she's like, I'm going to go see Nancy Mace. And then we, figured out where we were going in this building. and we went straight up. As soon as you get off the elevator on her floor, the first thing you see is Ilhan Omar's office.
Yep. Yep.
And it had the United States flag, the Minnesota's brand new Franken flag, and the pride flag.
Yep.
And not just the pride flag, it was the trans flag too, wasn't it?
I'm sorry, it wasn't the pride flag, it was the trans.
Progress pride. Progress,
whatever.
Yeah.
The trans.
Yeah.
And so that pink and blue thing. So, I mean, and when you see that and you see she's got all of these sticky notes from all of her supporters and everything like that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna venture to guess that the conservative reps don't get anywhere near as many visitors as the Democrat reps. Because when I'm looking at this, I'm going, this was hundreds of people with these sticky notes on her door. Our legislators are available to us at any time that we want to talk to them. We just have to make the effort to go up there and do it.
Yep.
So when we got to Nancy Mace's office, it was locked. But there was this lectern, right, that was standing there with a registry on it. And so we all signed the registry. I'm all looking at who was there before us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I felt like this is historical. I felt like I was signing the Declaration of Independence myself. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, I'm signing this.
I know. I was like, you're not signing up for me, are you, Gabs? Because I want to sign myself. Yeah.
Like we were so excited to sign this ledger of all of her visitors. And she had her flags up, and you know what I mean, and her bronze placard that had her name on it and all that stuff. And I was fighting the urge, to tear up, and fighting the urge. I was getting reclamped, you know what I mean? Because to me, I'm making history doing these things, right?
Well, not me. I was irritated that nobody was answering the door. And I was looking at the context clues, because outside of her office there was a couple standing talking, and then there was a guy with that looked like a professional photographer, and they were standing there talking. So we could tell that her office was the only one like in the center of the hall. So you knew that they were just there for her. And then like towards the opposite end, there were a couple of police officers that were standing there. And we were sitting there talking about what to do. Aaron Friday comes up, and then we were just having a chat, and then we were just thinking, well, she's not answering. Maybe she's not here. Maybe she's out at a meeting, at a hearing or something like that. So we just slid some information underneath the door, and we were getting ready to walk away. And then there was like a whole bunch of police officers that came all of a sudden.
They kind of like,
and that's when
they scurried down the aisle. Yeah.
That's when the cop's wife, thinking comes in, like, look, if there's a whole bunch of police officers coming around, something's about to go down, I'm leaving.
That was when Nancy Mace, like a fucking boss, just walks around the corner with a megaphone.
I know, and I start fangirling right away. I was like,
yeah,
oh, she's got a bullhorn. I wonder what she's been doing. And yes, I had to take a picture of her with the bullhorn, because I was like, ooh, I want to know more, because she's been yelling at people, and that is my jam.
Yeah.
Nancy Mace. Our bodies are no debate. Our bodies are no debate. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Our bodies are no debate. Our bodies are no debate. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Our bodies are no debate. Our bodies are no debate. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Our bodies are no debate.
Protesters showed up at the Capitol today to protest my bathroom bill, but they got arrested, poor things. So I have a message for the protesters who got arrested. You ready? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak when it's
at least that is Dawn's jam. She always says that she wants to go yell at people. But when she rounded that corner she rounded that corner with those boots and that pink dress and that bullhorn in her hand, that megaphone in her hand. Aaron scurried up to her to immediately go talk to her. But I was just like, oh shit, do I look okay? I was like freaking out a little bit. I was like freaking out a little bit, trying not to cry, as is my custom. Every time, every time I get excited, I cry. So I'm trying not to cry. Nick and Nikki is going, oh, it's a good thing we didn't leave, kind of thing,
Right. This wasn't a waste of time. I'm like, I'm not fangirling
now she's
in the
happy.
least.
Now she's happy because we didn't leave, because she was kind of getting annoyed at the fact that we went up there and the door was locked, because it's not usually locked. Their doors aren't usually locked.
Right.
And so, when we like you said, we slid our information and all that stuff. And when she comes around, then it was just kind of, we were all fangirling a little bit, I think. And then she talked with Aaron, and she kept walking down. She recognized me from Twitter and she gave me this big hug, and I was like, oh, and I'm, trying to, hold it together, and everybody got to, talk with her, and
She
we
listened
told her about
intently
what we
to
were
us.
doing.
Like, she didn't disappoint.
Did.
It was
This out
very.
in the hallway, or did she open the door and you went to her
We
office?
didn't give her the chance to do any of that.
Yeah, we stopped her
We
and
just
talked with
jumped
her,
on her
and
right away.
and she turned and gave us attention. She didn't even go into her office. I mean, it was just that she was engaged and wanted to hear what we had to say.
Yeah.
And we introduced ourselves, talked to her about what we thought were the important issues, and then she asked for a picture. And we then that's when we took that picture together. I thought that was just pretty cool because um I mean, I had met, obviously quite a few more legislative aides than I'd actually talked with representatives in the past. And for her to be, kind of this acutely, very popular and championing, a women's issue that we care about, and for her to give us that time, I thought that was pretty cool of her to do. And then actually post with a picture for us. It wasn't until later that we realized that the reason why she had that bullhorn was she had
Yeah.
just come back from reading Miranda rights to those trans activists who had gone in the women's bathroom at the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And so we caught her as soon as she was coming back from that. And so
That was awesome.
that was a
That
pretty
was
cool,
awesome. I mean, that
to
was
be a part of
like
that
knowing
moment.
that was,
Yeah.
I mean, knowing that we were on the tail end of that exchange was, I mean, and that's like that's historic too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we're on the tail end of
I
this exchange, watching
I
her.
can't help but wonder what she thought about that too. Like, she just got done giving them the business, so to speak, and then came, and we're that same issue. That's why we were there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you know what she said when she got with us? When she got with us, and I mean, she's got, a bunch of women standing at her office, all wide-eyed and everything, ready to talk to her. She says, it's like I have a whole new family now
She
that
did.
Yeah, she did
Yeah.
say
now
that. Yeah.
that she said it's like I have a whole new family. And it made me just go. I mean, I felt I had a lot of emotions about that, because so many people refuse to speak up because they're worried about what's going to happen to them.
Right.
But when it happened to her, when this was directly going to impact her, and she said, I cannot stay silent about this anymore. And she has a duty, she has a responsibility, to not just speak for the South Carolinians that she represents, but the whole of the country, and for women in particular.
That was the cool part of it too, because we told her right away where we were from and that we weren't South Carolina residents, but she still listened intently to us. A lot of times the representatives won't listen if you're not their specific constituent. So that was really important. And the other thing significant about what you just said, Gabs, is that one of the comments under somebody shared the video of me speaking at the rally. And one of the comments that still, it kind of really sticks with me, was someone stating that women, a lot of women aren't speaking out about this issue. And for me, that's been one of the frustrations, at least in the sports space of things, is that the women, at least at the collegiate level and the Olympic level, aren't really speaking out about it and about
Right.
about themselves. There's only a couple names that we all recognize who are actually doing that, and so the fact that that we are and that is recognized is actually really important. I mean,
Mhm.
because we have to speak up for the little girls,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the ones who and the ones who just come behind us, who can't, who are staying silent or self-censoring because they're in a situation that is really going to affect them. And so it did make it feel special having that connection with her, and knowing that we are kind of in a and there's not that many of us. And just
Right.
like a lot of the names we're mentioning here, there's very, we recognize these names because there's only a few people in this space doing this work.
Did
And
she
I thought that
ask at any point, did it become a partisan thing at all where she's like, are any of you Democrats or Republicans? Was there even
Nope.
any hint? Nothing.
No.
Well,
actually it's
I was
funny.
wearing my
That's
mega
funny.
hat, so
It's funny. Yeah, she had on her dark MAGA hat. She Nikki had on her dark MAGA hat. I mean, and
She
that MAGA
did.
hat
Yep.
got us into trouble now
Yeah.
while
yeah.
we were in DC. But listen, but so one of the things that was like the funniest thing was that Erin, she introduced herself first, and she says, "We're all disaffected Democrats," and I'm like,
I'm like,
I'm a
not
Democrat.
Yeah,
me.
me and Gabs were like, nope, not me. And here I am
No.
with my
Don
mega
Yeah.
hat.
too. Like none of us.
Yeah.
I
I've
mean,
never been a Democrat.
yeah, none of
Yeah.
us. None of us are. I mean, me, Nikki, and Don. And I know this sounds crazy, but I feel like Don is one of us. So me, Nikki, and Don are Black Republicans. Okay, like when I say that because all of
Is that
Don's
like
kids
Bill
are Black,
Clinton was
right?
our
So
first black
Oh,
president?
well,
yeah,
it's
like
because
no,
it's
because
because all of her kids are,
all of
yeah.
Don's kids are
Well,
Black,
it's true.
right?
All
Yeah,
my kids
so
are
all of
Black.
Don's kids are
Yeah.
Black. So I feel like Dawn is a Black mother. You know what I mean? Like in my view, I don't know why. Maybe it's the curly hair. I don't know, but in
She's
my
got
view,
blonde privilege, don't you know
I
that?
think it's the attitude. I
it
think it's
maybe
yeah.
is
I
the
think it's the
attitude.
attitude.
But I felt like when Aaron said that, I was like, we're all Black Republicans here. Like, you know, I mean, it was just so funny.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because really, really, Aaron was the only Republican in the group.
Democrat. She was
I
only
mean, the only
Democrat.
Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the only Democrat in the group of us. The rest of us are lifelong Republicans.
Yeah.
How
So
did you correct that? How did you approach
we
it
were
in
like,
the moment when she says
I
that?
like,
You all
well,
went like
you
this?
know,
Did you
me
look
is
at
just
each
like
other?
I'm
Like,
not.
yeah, we
No,
did.
what did
we
Erin
that's
I
her
mean,
do?
I did.
reaction.
I was like,
No, no, we're
no,
not.
no.
What did Erin do? She just lost her whole group that she thought she had the support with. Was she like, okay?
Yeah. But
I mean,
but you make a great point, Joey. And no, the representatives that we met with, including Nancy Mace, did not bring that up at all.
they
That
didn't
wasn't
care.
the issue. They focused on the issue. They did not care if we were constituents. They really listened to what we had to say.
Well,
It was about the policy and the issue.
Representative, is it Mafala? Malfala?
Yeah. Yeah.
He did ask if we thought the tide was turning on
Oh,
this issue. He did ask that, and I told him about someone close to me who I won't say here because I don't want to get her in trouble. But she had told me in the spring that she was not going to vote for Trump because she's a moderate that leans to the left. She wasn't going to vote for Trump in the spring because he's an asshole. And that in right before the election, she said that she voted for Trump because of this issue and Kamala with the prisons and having taxpayers pay for the transing of these prisoners and everything. That it's just not right. So she voted for Trump. So I
That we
told him
need
that.
So I want to say,
Republicans to grow up and get some, as we say for the women, get some huevos, and the men to get some balls and
Yeah.
stop supporting this stuff.
But
Yeah.
I think that and you know, I'm always in reflection, right? I'm always looking at something that I could have done or that I didn't that I
Uh-oh.
did or didn't do that contributed or could have contributed to a better outcome. And you know what? You know what? It had never occurred to me to appeal to the women in the legislature.
Mm.
I mean, we talk about, I mean, I've met Ted Cruz, you know, I don't know how many times. I've gone to some of my male legislators, I don't know how many times, but it just had never really occurred to me to reach out to someone who was maybe not in my state. And I always thought that Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was going to get us. You know what I mean? She was going to pick up the mantle for us when the time was right for her. And that you know this would and I mean we had even seen Nancy Mace make comments before you know during hearings
Oh,
and things like that.
uh-huh.
We'd seen her advocate for against gender affirming care. We had seen that
Hmm.
before, and we had seen some things like that before. But I feel like the thing that I'm taking away from all of this is that we just haven't done enough to let our legislators know exactly what we're seeing on the ground. Because they know what is happening. And when I say our legislators, I mean our United States legislators, not necessarily our state legislators, because
Because I was going to say, I have
I'm bugging the
told
snot
them.
out of my state
Yeah, yeah, Don, we
legislators.
Yeah,
know Don's
like
already been
like
banned by
like
her.
that senator, that state senator, she's a lesbian, and I flat out wrote a question to her. I said, "What if a man in a dress said that he was a lesbian and wanted to date you, wanted to be physically intimate with you? How would that make you feel?" And of course, she didn't answer because she's
Right,
a fucking coward.
right.
But yeah, so
But that's
I
what
trust me. Yeah.
I mean more specifically because I feel like we think our representatives are so out of reach. Now, when we went to go and visit my state rep, you know, like I mean, my congressman, he's a dentist, Dr. Brian Babin, right? We went to his office. His staff was more than you know, they were attentive. They asked questions.
Hmm.
They wanted to know everything. We spent a good deal of time in that office.
Yep.
Um, and you know, they were very receptive to everything we had to say. So part of me is like, why hadn't we always been doing this? And now, and I mean, because I feel like some of the activism that we had engaged in was to alert the public. But if we wanted some more top down stuff, then we needed to go to the top.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Well,
I mean, that's why, I mean, even Dawn, she's like, I'm going back to DC because we didn't get an opportunity to talk to enough people. You know, we didn't get,
right.
first of all, you have to walk everywhere.
Did you meet with
Yeah.
others besides Nancy once you were done
Yeah.
engaging with her?
Mhm.
Who else were you able to have contact with and have an exchange with?
Yeah,
That guy from the California legislator, what was
Yeah,
his
that's the one
Mafala.
that Don was
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's at a
he was in fact he was in an interview in his inner office and we were talking with his staff and he heard us and he stopped his interview and
and
came
came
out
out?
and talked with us for like at least 15 minutes.
We saw some legislators out in the hall, and they were very nice. You know, we didn't really sit and you know have a long discussion with them. We did go to a lot of offices and we did meet with a lot, of different staff. So
Yes.
you know,
Which I think
you
is
know,
important too. You can't
that's
just
important too. Yeah,
the staff, have the ear of the legislator.
yeah,
So yeah, it's really important if you have the opportunity to speak with the staff, you speak with the
yeah.
staff.
You take
And
Um,
they're the ones
pamphlets,
who write the
business
bills
cards.
also.
right. They are. Nikki's right.
Yeah,
They are. The
yeah,
staff is the one
yeah.
that writes the bills.
Like a general like family doctor who may kind of know a little bit about everything. But when they
Right.
need a specialist They
They
go for
call
the
that
specialist. So
specialist
the
in.
Right.
legislative aides, the congressmen have different aides for different types of legislation, and
And
some of
that's
them,
what they
and,
did.
and remember, they sit on committees, and their committee tends to be kind of their special interest, the thing that they work
Right.
on, and not every congressman has like a health aide that's in tune to every single thing in health. Some of the congressmen actually have an aide and senators have an aide that's specifically focused on this transgender issue. Not all of them
Right.
Mhm.
have that. And so,
And
but
they
you don't
gave
know
us
that
their
unless you talk
card.
to them. Yeah.
Right.
They gave us
And
one.
yet,
I mean,
and
when we
yep.
talked with them, they gave us each the card of the intern or of the staff member that handles that particular area, so that we
Right. The
can really
social
direct it out to
issues.
them. Yeah, for
Yes.
their social issues. So I mean, we can reach. We can reach out to them and talk to them. And even Nancy Grace said, "Listen,
Thanks.
I'm available." Nancy Mace. I'm sorry,
Not
Nancy.
Nancy Grace.
Even not Nancy Grace, not Nancy Grace. She's vile. But Nancy Mace, she said specifically, "Come to me with your proposals for bills.
Yep.
I will listen. I will hear whatever you have to say. And please don't hesitate to bring it, to bring it to my office."
Yeah, and
So that was really
the other
exciting.
piece of this is goes back to something we talked about in the very beginning, and that is what the key is. I mean, a lot of these the state legislators and even now the federal government, federal representatives and senators are introducing bills that ban puberty blockers, sex hormones and surgeries. Not a lot of them are understanding the whole social transition component of this, and that doesn't necessarily take legislation. Now, there are some things that we're considering, with affirming reality, in terms of requiring continue, asking for education for people who are in this business. But a lot of what we do is trying to get the message out. And that's kind of been a theme of a lot of what we've
Right.
been talking about is getting the message out so that people understand the stuff that's happening. And legislators actually do have that ability. They can actually write resolutions that are pass resolutions that are really all about the education. It
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean you have to
Right.
ban something.
Right.
And so people don't realize that part of it too. That
That
is
needs
part
to
of policy
also
making.
happen. Yeah, it
Yeah,
has
Yes.
to
yeah,
also happen.
yeah. And
We
not
have
just
to
that
have that in conjunction
it
with.
needs to also happen, it's that it can also happen. Because
Yeah.
people think that when they're going to their congressman, they talk to them, they actually have to have money or voters.
Mhm.
But no, they really actually have to have good ideas, and some of
Mhm.
those ideas
Mhm.
can really just to be about of championing an education about something. And now it's particularly in the case of Nancy Mace, she is someone who's not, I mean, she's actually, championing, legislation, for bathroom safety and that kind of thing. But she also has a voice now. So these
Mhm.
Mhm.
people who become popular, they are the ones who get invited to the weekend talk shows
Right.
or Fox
Yep.
News or CNN or whatever, and they get to talk about the issue. So even if they
Right.
don't get a legislative piece, they can at least introduce these ideas to the public and get them out there.
I really appreciate all of you sharing these. You can see there's a variety of feelings and knowledge and experience and all this stuff, devotion, that all of you have given to this. But I know personally that, some of you drove for hours, you flew for hours, you had to wait and this and that. This was a huge endeavor, and it's always hard to get more than two people in the room at the same time and, willing to do the thing. And you all did it. And I'm going to ask you, Dawn, first. And this is the same question for all of you, is that if you had to pick one of the biggest effects that attending this particular event, outside of the Supreme Court, it being the Skrmetti, case and all that, the hearings, what was the biggest takeaway that, Dawn, you would say you got out of this as you were flying back home and have had some time now to think about it?
Well, anytime I travel somewhere and there's a bunch of us gathering, um, it is always nice to see my friends from across the country because I don't get to see them in person, um, often. So I know that sounds silly to enjoy that aspect of enjoy any aspect of a protest, but I enjoy seeing my friends. But the biggest takeaway would be, going to see the legislators, the Congress people, and speaking not just with their staff, but with some of the Congress people themselves. And I know that I will be going back because I didn't get to speak with as many as I would have liked. And I will probably wait for Trump to be reinstalled before I go back. But yeah, as soon as I can, as soon after his inauguration, I intend to go back, and I mean business, and I'm going to meet with as many of them as I possibly can.
Well, I know you got interviewed, and in one of the interviews, this guy had asked you the question about, Trump, and do you think he's going to be able to, end the gender affirming, model and all that stuff? And you're like, well, he better. I'm going to call him.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I said he asked if I thought Trump would keep his promise, and I said he damn well better, or I will call him. And one of my ROGD mom friends says, I think you should call him anyway. It's like, you know what? I will. I will call him. I will call him.
Pick up that red phone, right? You've got a direct
That's right.
line right now. Gab, how about you?
Well, I always dread going to these things. Dawn knows I'm super grumpy beforehand. I'm not happy about it. Because the danger, is always with me. You know what I mean? I have a broken finger because of it. And being one of the bigger women, I'm usually protecting somebody. And so. Like really, really noticing and seeing how this can turn into a really bad situation, and make history for a really terrible reason, is always at the back of my mind. So going into this, we saw when we first got there, to the actual protest outside of SCOTUS. And we're all worried about what's happening inside that building. We're all, in awe of this historical site, looking at the marble, looking at the architecture and the craftsmanship, of people who lived so long ago. The people who wrote and upheld the laws that we still live by today. All of that history, everything. And then looking at, how many people are disagreeing with one another and the enormity of it. Also seeing that there were multiple organizations that converged on our SCOTUS steps in solidarity with one another, who even the previous year would have been on the opposite side. I mean, we're looking at women's organizations who were very much against the decision about the abortion situation, and also pro-life organizations who were in favor of it. Those two organizations stood side by side to rail against gender affirming care and to rail against the rape of our children's futures and of their minds and of their bodies. And so watching the importance of just people who need to show up, like just how important it is to just be there when all of this is going down. Like I said, when we first got there, there were a lot of us, but I knew that was going to change quickly. And by the end of it, we were outnumbered by a lot. And me and Don, we were concerned about the potential for the spark of violence to ignite, because we knew what that looked like, and it was happening. Make no mistake, there were situations that in other instances it would have jumped off, and we would have had some real problems. Me and Nikki tried to me and Nikki, tried to go into one of the buildings, one of the churches, to use the ladies' room, and the church refused to let us in. They let all the trans rights activists in, though. That was their hub, was this church right next to SCOTUS, the Methodist church. And the guy told us, he knew who we were, he knew what we were doing there, and he told us to go down the street to the Lutheran church. I mean, just
I had forgotten about
the
that. Yep,
Right.
yeah,
that was eye-opening for me.
the enormity of how divided people are on this issue and how big it all really truly is. Because I mean, we think of this as something that is affecting our lives or the people that we know or we meet or whatever, but this has worldwide implications.
Mhm.
And the world is watching us, and we were there. We were there as the world watched.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, for me, how big it all is, and how important it is for us to do everything we can to support each other so that we can all show up and be there. I would not have been there had it not been the support of Affirming Reality Connected. I would not be there had it not been for the support of my followers on Twitter. And so, just knowing that all of the stars align so that I could be there with these two amazing women and have this experience together with them, and seeing complete and total adversaries set aside their differences for this is marvelous.
Nikki,
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid to go after that.
Are you all done, Gabs? Yeah, never mind.
No, I actually have four takeaways, and I will make them brief. One of them, is picking up where Gabs left off. I am grateful for being able to be a part of such an historic moment. Because we think this is a small issue. I remember thinking back when I first learned about this issue happening, and I knew it was coming around before 2018, but I remember thinking that it wouldn't get this big. There's no way people are this crazy and we're just going to let this go on and become something so big that needs to go to the Supreme Court. This is, it's an enormous issue, but it really truly was an historic time to be there. So I'm grateful for that. I also appreciated the diversity of the coalition, the people that we were on the side that we were on. I was in full awareness of the fact that many of the people there were my political adversaries on some other issues. But on this one thing, we agreed and we came together. And then our voices, our collective voices, are powerful, and we just have to use them. And not enough people know how that the true power is in the citizenry of this country, not the people that we elect to do the job. Their aides don't know everything. The representatives don't know everything. We need to get the message to them and help them to advocate for us. And so that is something I'm reminded of every single time I visit DC. Is that part of the job of being a citizen and a responsible citizen is to make sure that the people we elect to represent us actually understand what our needs are. And then kind of the third thing is really just the reality of the enormity of the work that we have to do. While our coalition was probably more diverse in thought and type of person who was there. I mean, we had people who were who were once trans or were probably actively trans. We had youth We had older people, we had Democrats, we had Republicans, we had libertarians, and we had women, we had men, academic people, non-academic people, people just coming on their free time. We had all of those people. Even though their side or the opposition side was larger, they tended to be younger,
Mhm.
university level academics, and were people who were caught in the cult. And so, when we look at the grand scheme of things, even though they were bigger in number in a crowd that was there, they represent a very small fraction
Right.
of this country. And so we
Mhm.
do have the power. We just need to exercise it. And then my fourth takeaway was absolutely, probably without a doubt, the best part of it was getting to bond and meet in person and hug Don and hug Gabs and just kind of, be off the screen and get to know each other and bond with one another and just witness the power, witness the strength of these women. Like we've all had, we got pieces of us are broken, pieces of us are strong, and it's just inspiring. And we need that, working from home. I'm isolated a lot. I'm not always around friends or people who are, who are doing this kind of work that's impactful. And it was, an opportunity to actually meet and be in person and have that human touch.
Excellent.
So, yep.
Thank you so much,
Sorry.
all of you. You got me teared up here. We're going to wrap this up, and there's going to be some bonus material. Will be a separate clip that I'll make from some of the things that you've given me. I know, Don, I started with you, and those two went on, and they had all that wonderful stuff to say. Did you feel cheated at all about your takeaways because you had that one? Are you good, or is there any
Um,
last thing?
well, I don't think I felt cheated. I could always talk forever, but I think I hit the highlights pretty well. So
All
it,
right. Well, with that, thank you, ladies. And this has been such a journey. I want to say we're getting near the end of the year here. This video is out in December of 2024. I don't think there were any photos, Gabs, taken of you and I at the AAP thing, but the image that I will say that I have in my mind from watching that I could, right? Because we're looking from Twitter. If you're not there, and like I said, I was really nervous. I barely slept the night before because I was so nervous about the potential level of somebody really getting hurt because it was that big and it was that significant. And I am one who tends to always think of in the mindset of what would the other side do? What could they possibly
mhm.
be thinking of? So it's kind of a blessing and a curse. But what I saw in just some of the stuff that started to come out, it was a little bit slow, but it was just, I felt relaxed. And I thought, if something does come up, because as you two were talking, Don and Gabs, and I know I had this when I was at We Spa with an old friend back then in 2021 in Los Angeles, that we were already there for more than 2 hours and we had infiltrated inside of the We Spa thing. And I was already looking at who might be the plants here, what's going on. Oh, time goes on and there's a certain thing. And for me, it was when they started to set the dumpsters on fire
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
middle of the street, and I knew it. And I said to my friend who'd been to several protests, and she knew too. We looked at each other. I'm like, it's time to go. We're going
Yep.
to have to wrap this
Yep.
up. There are just certain things that you feel. It's a vibe that you get, and it takes a
Mhm.
while for that. Just felt like my gals are out there. Everything's okay. I was like chilled by the midday here on the West Coast and feeling like this is a good thing. And I still haven't been able to hear all of the arguments, that were done in the hearings, but um, that was the main thing for me was just come back home safe. I know you all have kids.
At
And
both of those, at the AAP in Anaheim and at Port Townsend, I made the final decision that it was time to leave on both of those at both of those public demonstrations.
Mhm.
I
You're
had to.
talking about the moment, aren't you, when Abigail Martinez was outside and
Yes.
not
And Aaron turned to me and I said, it's time to go right now.
Yeah.
And she said,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And we left. And same thing when we were in Port Townsend. I said, Amy, it is time for us to leave right now.
Yeah, but
And
Amy Sousa, who got to let Julie
Right.
let Julie
Yeah.
swim.
Trans rights are human rights. 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 Trans rights are human rights.
I was the one guarding both Abigail Martinez and Julie Jamon. So
Right.
I was standing next to both of those women. And when it got to a point where I could not, it was clear that I wasn't going to be able to protect them. Then it was time to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
it is.
I think there's something to be said though for people who, if you have a gut instinct about stuff, especially if you're a mom, you kind of know
Oh,
when,
yeah.
when danger is coming. And so you may not know exactly what the danger is, but for people to be aware of that and just just go, don't distrust your own instincts and judgments. I might have. I know. I'm pretty sure I asked Gabs like a couple of times. Okay, so what's that one, or who's that, or like that kind of thing.
Because of
Yeah.
2020, Nikki,
Yeah.
everything just getting so insanely different about just being able to go and speak. I mean, there've been a handful of us across the country that started to see the silencing of what we're like, we're on a sidewalk. We're just practicing
Right.
free
Yeah.
speech, right? And then by
Mhm.
the time 2020 came and after the BLM stuff, it was like the whole game changed. Everything
It
changed
Yeah.
did.
But
so
Mhm.
radically.
sorry, I'm a Black Republican or a Black conservative. I worked in a field that was predominantly left wing and with ideology, and I grew up in a very, very blue area of the country. I'm no stranger to being the person who gets silenced, or at least having to face that. And the physical nature of it is a completely different thing. But this seeing people's voices be shut down, that's not new for me.
So
That's my life.
would you be able to encourage other people, because 2025, we have no idea what things are going to look like even in the next 3 months, 3 to 4 months, right? Things can be changing so radically. Would all of you encourage people to get involved at a local level and really speak
Oh,
up
yeah.
and go to
Always.
things and hook up with other people
Yeah.
that are going to things like this, even though what you were
Absolutely.
doing was, I mean, it was a huge.
Absolutely. If this is the time to do it, this is actually the time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Because with a tide changing, at least at the federal government level, the realities that you're going to be targeted by the Department of Justice for speaking out are, that is it's a very different environment. This is your time to speak up now.
Yes.
This is not the time to back down and think, oh gosh, Trump's elected, he's gonna handle it. No,
Yeah.
No,
No.
no,
we
no, no, no,
still
no.
have to do the work. The work still
Yes.
needs to be done. Yeah, but you just have, if you were worried about speaking out and facing some sort of justice from the federal government level, at least that part of it, I think you can relax about. But if you're in an area like Washington State where Dawn is, you need to go see her about some tactics that you can use to keep yourself
Oh, I'll
They'll
tell you
make you
how
a
to do
badge.
it. Yeah, I
yeah.
will. I do.
Yeah.
They'll make you a badge.
I'll make you a sign too. The signs, I got those. Yeah. I'm in the process of making a bunch of signs for my friend in Oregon so she can protest outside gender clinics there too. So
All right, ladies. Well, thank you
All right.
all so much, and see you on the other side real soon. Our
Thank
regular
you.
meeting.
Thank you for doing this, Joey. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Joey.
All right. Take care.